Lord be with you.
And with thy spirit.
Let us pray. Lord of life, who decks thyself with light as with a garment, who spreadest out the heavens like a curtain, mighty creator of this and every world, of all stars and planets in their courses, we thy children render unto thee our praise and honour for the wonder of thy handiwork, for the beauty of creation, and at this season most especially, for the blessing of new life and hope, visible in the face of our Mother the Earth as she awakens to spring. In her awakening we see Christ triumphant over death. In her we see the rejoicing of St. Mary Magdalene, first witness of the resurrection. In her we see the fruitfulness of our most blessed and glorious Lady, the Virgin Mary, through whom thou hast given us the light of the world, the light that shineth in darkness, the Word made flesh. We pray thee, use the beauty of this creation to knit our hearts to the things that endure to eternity. At this time we especially remember before thee all burdened with illness, the isolated, and those who work to alleviate the sufferings of others. Bless those who have died recently, that we with them may rejoice at the dawning of the endless day of the kingdom of thy Son, our Saviour Jesus Christ.
Amen.
May the Lord bless us and keep us.
Amen.
May the Lord make his face to shine upon us and be gracious unto us.
Amen.
May the Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon us and give us peace.
Amen.
And may God Almighty, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost bless our nation, our city, our universities, our families, friends, and neighbours, giving us the peace that passes all understanding.
Amen. Now is the month of May, when Mary has stopped playing. La 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 la, la 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 la. Now is the month of May, when Mary has stopped playing. La 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 la, la 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 la. Each week is morning mass upon the green grass. La 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 la.
When I first took an interest in Oxford's May Day celebrations, I had a dim sense that they all began with the singing of the Latin Hymnus Eucharistus from the top of Magdalen Tower. In due course, no doubt, the Morris joined in. And all kinds of shenanigans later attached themselves to the celebrations. This is quite the wrong way round. Historically, the story of May morning Oxford actually begins with the shenanigans. The Morris came later, and the singing from Magdalen Tower only became the focus of events relatively late in the day. Maytime has long been celebrated to honour the seasonal rebirth of vegetation. The Celts observe Beltane, decorating their doors and windows with flowers and greenery and lighting ritual bonfires. The Romans celebrated with a 6-day festival dedicated to Flora, the goddess of flowers and fertility. It was called the Floralia. This was very much a festival of the plebeians, the common people, who garlanded their hair and pelted each other with beans, vetches and lupins, all emblems of fecundity. It was associated with licentiousness. Hares and goats, symbols of lust, were let loose, and prostitutes danced naked in the streets. Riotous springtime shenanigans continued long after the fall of Rome and the coming of Christianity. Throughout Europe, simply bringing greenery in from the countryside to deck town or village was the most widespread of the rites. When in season, hawthorn hedges smothered in white and pink blossom would have been spectacular features of the landscape, so bringing in the May typically meant bringing in branches of hawthorn, though, to tell the truth, any green boughs would do. This primal instinct to green up towns and villages, to dance and make music, was already controversial in Britain in 1250, when the Chancellor of Oxford University forbade, alike in churches, all dancing in masks or with disorderly noises, and all processions of men wearing wreaths and garlands made of leaves of trees, or flowers, or what not. Alike in churches, he says, revellers were not just partying in the streets, they were invading holy places. Now, the earliest record of maypoles in Britain comes from 1350, though they may be much more ancient in origin. Poles might be topped by garlands, but no one held ribbons in those early days, they just did circle dances round them. As for Morris dancing, this is first recorded in England in 1448. No one knows for sure how it started, but it does seem that it was originally some form of court entertainment, perhaps derived from Moorish dancing, and only later became more widespread as a rural activity. By Tudor times, May games and Morris dancing are closely associated. In Oxford in 1599, we're told, the inhabitants assembled on the 2 Sundays before Ascension Day, and on that day with drum and shot and other weapons, and men attired in women's apparel, brought into the town a woman bedecked with garlands and flowers, named by them the Queen of the May. They also had Morris dancers and some other disordered and unseemly sports. The report alludes to men attired in women's apparel. Cross-dressing was a ribald feature of Morris celebrations, which particularly scandalised opponents. This is what the Morris looked like in Tudor times. You can see the May or Maid Marian behind the hobby horse. This isn't a female Morris dancer, it's a man in drag. And what of the singing from Magdalen Tower? The first reference doesn't come until 1695, when the great Oxford diarist Anthony A. Wood describes the ritual as an invocation to the summer. The choral ministers of this house do, according to an ancient custom, salute Flora every year on the 1st of May, at 4 in the morning, with vocal music of several parts. There's no mention of the hymnus Eucharistus, nor any suggestion by Wood that church music was sung at all. Rather, May Day was greeted with secular part songs dedicated to Flora, the Roman goddess. The singing probably started, we think, in 1509, which is the year when the tower was completed. Singing from atop church towers was actually not unique to Magdalen. In Anthony Wood's day, New College had its own ceremony, which was followed by a procession to St Bartholomew's Hospital on the Cowley Road. There were lords and ladies, garlands, fifes, flutes and drums to salute the great goddess Flora and to attribute her all praise with dancing and music. The New College ceremony was only abandoned due to clashes with Magdalen men and what was called the rabble of the town. Note their saluting Flora again. The disreputable Roman goddess is referred to time and again in 17th century street ballads, diaries and poetic effusions alike. The Puritans freaked out. They saw Flora as a living reality, a pagan goddess come back to life in the figure of the May Queen. Puritan Thomas Hall rails against Flora as a whore of the city of Rome in the county of Babylon. As for maypoles, the scandalised Puritan Philip Stubbs describes how men and women, young and old, would go out into the woods on May Eve and spend all night making merry. Vast crowds returned in the morning with yoked oxen. This maypole, he writes, this stinking idol rather, is covered all over with flowers and herbs, with 200 or 300 men, women and children following it with great devotion, and thus being reared up with handkerchiefs and flags streaming on the top, they straw the ground about, bind green boughs about it, set up summer houses, bowers and arbours hard by it, and then fall they to banquet and feast, to leap and dance about it, as the heathen people did at the dedication of their idols. The summer houses, bowers and arbours were clearly shady retreats for serving ale or chilling out or both. Altogether, accounts irresistibly evoke contemporary preparations for setting up a rave. But the bigger celebrations required some preparation and funding from local landlords or even the parish church. Why did churchmen finance the revels? The explanation can be found in the long tradition of church ales, festivals staged since medieval times for fundraising. The church wardens financed the amusements and sold the ale. Profits then paid for the maintenance of the parish church, or were distributed as alms for the poor. So began a cheery complicity, deep-rooted in many towns and villages, between the parish church and the disorderly revellers. Some parishes even kept their own sets of Morris costumes in church to be brought out for their annual celebrations. Hardcore Puritans were horrified by the whole thing. In Banbury, the Puritan mob destroyed the maypoles. In Oxford, a Puritan labourer named John Wildgoose provoked a fight by trying to stop the annual bringing in the May garland ceremony at St Peter's Church. There followed a punch-up, and many of the parishioners were beaten and pulled by the hair. The Puritan backlash really struck home after the Royalist defeat following the Civil War. In 1644, Cromwell's Parliament clamped down on May revels, banning the erection of maypoles, which were declared a heathenish vanity, generally abused to superstition and wickedness. With the restoration of the monarchy in 1660, May Day returned with a vengeance. Anthony Wood reports that in Oxford the people were so violent for maypoles, in opposition to the Puritans, that there was numbered 12 maypoles besides 3 or 4 Morrises. Gradually, Puritan attitudes began to relax. Countless restoration ballads celebrated the return of May Day, and the 18th century age of enlightenment would bring increasing religious toleration. Adorning Romanticism also glorified nature and rural life. A wealth of paintings now depict Maytime frolics in a generally favourable light. In 18th century Oxfordshire we hear increasingly of boys blowing cows' horns early on May morning. Local lads blew them at the foot of Magdalen Tower to try and drown out the choristers. Notice the type of garland shown here, with the doll in the middle. She was typically known as the Lady, either in secret reference to Flora or to the Virgin Mary, whose cult had also angered the Puritans. Magdalen Tower's own ritual evolves in the 18th century. Early in that period we read of a merry concert of both vocal and instrumental music, consisting of several merry catches and lasting almost 2 hours. Almost 2 hours! Sometime later, the business of mounting so long a concert so early in what is often cold, drizzly weather became too much of an ordeal. One wet May morning, organist and choir climbed the 172 steps to the great tower and just sang the college grace. This was the Hymnus Eucharistus. It was mercifully short and needed no rehearsal. By Victorian times, May Day was being subsumed into the myth of Merry England, a pastoral idyll untouched by machine-age soot and smoke and the brutal factory grind. May garlands and maypole dancing were suffused now with the aura of a lost golden age. The May Queen, a human replica of the once abhorred Flora, was feted in children's books, fit for the youngest in the Victorian nursery. And the maypole acquired its ribbons. In 1836, at the Victoria Theatre in London, a show was put on featuring a maypole braided with ribbons for the dancers to hold. Thereafter, the practice spread. A ribboned maypole is seen here at the Cremorne Gardens in 1858. 3 eminent Victorians helped to legitimise May Day. One was Alfred Lord Tennyson with his long poem, The May Queen, a meditation on beauty, vanity and wasted youth. It was hugely popular in Victorian times. The second of our eminent Victorians was the pre-Raphaelite Holman Hunt, who in 1888 attended the May morning singing on Magdalen Tower. This still little-known ceremony had been revitalised a bit by a fellow of Magdalen, Dr. Bloxham, who was scandalised by the shabby performances he'd seen. He wrote that it was more like a bacchanalian song than a sacred hymn. The principal function of the choristers seemed to be to throw down rotten eggs on the people below. Dr. Bloxham restored decorum by insisting that the choir should wear surplices, take off their hats and caps, and turn east towards the rising sun. In the painting, Hunt depicts Bloxham himself, the man in the black robe. In 1892, this engraving appeared on the frontispiece of Alden's Oxford Guide, and a flood of postcards would later be issued illustrating the same theme. Now, Oxford's custom really entered the national calendar of traditional events. The third of our eminent Victorians was John Ruskin, who ritualised May Day at Whitelands College in Chelsea, a training college for female teachers. In 1881, Ruskin was invited to help create an annual May Queen festival. He erased all earthy, subversive elements of the original celebration to create a sentimental rite enacted by ethereal maidens in virginal white dresses. A popular student would be elected every year to be crowned May Queen, and she returned the next year to crown the new May Queen. Students from Whitelands became teachers and carried these new May traditions into schools across the face of Britain. So, scandalous May Day revels became safe and sanitised school curriculum stuff. Morris dancing retained something of the rougher, more subversive vitality of the original May revels. It was fast disappearing in the 19th century, but revived following a famous encounter on Boxing Day in 1899. Cecil Sharp, a great pioneer of the folk music revival, was spending a family Christmas at Headington, just outside Oxford, at a house where building work had recently been done. Foreman of the builders' gang was a Morris dancer and concertina player named William Kimber. He appeared at the house with the Headington Morris dancers. They weren't looking to make history, only to earn some money, as bad weather had led to a shortage of building work. Sharp saw the dancers and was fascinated. He developed a long and dynamic relationship with Kimber, who became Sharp's informant on the whole Morris tradition. A nationwide revival of the Morris followed. Enthusiasts explored existing traditions with passionate interest, and a number of Morris clubs were formed up and down the country to keep traditions alive. At the outset of World War I, many members of Oxford University had become keen Morris dancers, and in 1926 the Oxford University Men's Morris was inaugurated. Later, a town side was formed, known as the Oxford City Morris Men, to distinguish them from the university side. Both sides are now flourishing. They practice together and perform together, and it is they who issue the invitations to other Morris sides to dance in Oxford on May morning. William Kimber, you might like to know, taught and played for the Oxford City Police Morris side, which flourished in the interwar period until an overweight officer crashed through a platform during a display. Kimber can be seen seated front left in the photograph. Here he is again, still playing for Headington Morris on May morning in 1949. In the earlier part of the 20th century, Magdalen Bridge itself was garlanded by school children, and draymen's horses trotted across in procession, decked out with flowers and rosettes. Undergraduates hired punts and leapt from boat to boat, some inevitably sploshing into the water. Jumping from the bridge was not wholly unknown, but only became a dangerous mania from about the 1980s. Since 2011 it has been very carefully policed by stewards, and there have been no further injuries. Oxford's May morning crowd has just grown and grown, from 5,000 in 1968 to 10,000 in 1974 and a record-breaking 27,000 in 2017. And in 2020, stay home, stay safe.
Get ready for the festival. for the festival is only once a year. Raise your glasses in the air and fill the barrels full of beer. Mother Nature wave a wand over this lady's hand. May her rain mean a good year on our land. The legend Josephine, the blonde, blue-eyed May Queen, spent the night in the arms of her lover the day before the crown. Gifts and flowers by her bed, tired eyes and sleepy head. You stay warm until the morning calls you in. And the crowd scream, Josephine, our May Day eyes are on you. The people sing and drown in wine to crown the queen of spring time. And at only 17 we've given you our blessings. And as you sleep tonight, your heart is in safekeeping. And nature's girl today can wipe her tears away. Her time to shine has nearly come. In the church they pray for harvest. You hear the church bells ring, and your friends are in the bar tonight to see the May Day in. But you are the queen, and life isn't quite as easy. God bless the libertine that lies within our Josephine. And the crowd scream, Josephine, our May Day eyes are on you. The people sing, drown in wine to crown the queen of spring time. Hold on to your lover's hand and he will give you all the strength you need tonight. And somewhere in a promised land is the love for the one you lie beside. When it gets dark and cold, you've got warm arms to hold. And in the morning, you'll be the angel of them all. When the crowds scream, Josephine, our May Day eyes are on you. People sing and drown in wine to crown the queen of spring time.
Hey, good morning everyone. We are Cry Havoc Morris, all the way from lovely sunny Botley, and we were hoping to be out and about celebrating May morning. But of course, things are rather different. So we thought instead you might like to get into the spirit of things by joining us in a dance. Now don't worry, it's very easy and I'm going to show you what to do. So this is what we're going to try. Now the dance has a sort of chorus and a verse. And we start with the chorus, and it's very easy because all you do is you dance forward for 8 steps like that, and then back for 8 steps like that. And then that's so easy, you do it again. Forward for 8 steps and back for 8 steps. Right, now it's time for the verse. Now the verse, we stand still, but we do a bit of clapping. And it goes like this. We go clap, clap, right foot, clap, clap, left foot, clap, under, front, back, front. And again, clap, clap, right foot, clap, clap, left foot, clap, under, front, back, front. And that's the verse. And we then do the chorus again, forward for 8 and back for 8. And forward for 8, and back for 8. And then we do the clapping again, except this time we go clap, clap, right knee. Clap, clap, left knee. So we go round the cycle of the chorus and the verse, starting with the foot, and we go knee, hip, shoulder, head, and then there's one more I'll tell you about when we get there. And we finish up at the end by dancing into the centre and out again. And then dance into the centre, but this time stay there for 4 last beat jump, 2, 3, and we're done. Right, now are you ready? Pause this for a moment, see if you can find a hanky or something, and as many of you as are watching together, make a sort of half circle around the screen. Now, this dance is from Headington. The tune is an Old English tune called Shepherd's Hay, and that's what the dance is called too. So I'm going to go and start the music, and I'll count us in. 1, 2, 3, go. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, and go. So forward and back and again. And back. Right, clapping. Clap, clap, right foot. Left foot. Clap, under, front, back, front. Clap, clap, right foot. Left foot. Clap, under, front, back, front. And then sweep forward again. And back. 1, 2, 3. We're done! Hooray! Well done, everyone, and a happy May to you all.
My name's Rachel, and as part of this year's virtual May morning, I'm going to be showing you how to play the spoons. So normally on May morning I would be Morris dancing. We'd be getting up at 5, putting on our white trousers and bells and stuff, hanging out under Magdalen Tower with a man dressed as a tree, dancing in the streets, all the usual things. And then at some point after all of that, we'd find ourselves probably in the back garden of the Rose and Crown, playing some music, and that is where these would come in. So, if you want to play the spoons yourself, the first thing you need is some suitable cutlery. If you have a rummage in your cutlery drawer, you will find hopefully some spoons. And what you're looking for is ones that have a nice steep bowl here, a bit of an angle there, so that if you put them back to back, you can see there's a bit of space. So having had a rummage in my own cutlery drawer, we've got these IKEA spoons. Not very much of an angle, but you can still just about get them to hit against each other. You've got these slightly better spoons, a bit more angle there, slightly deeper bowl, slightly better sound. So if you've got some like this, these would be perfect. And then my favourite spoons, these are a set of rather old soup spoons, and this nice deep bowl will give them a nice ringing sound, like this. So the first thing I should say before we get started is there's not really a right way to do this. There are some basic techniques which I'm going to show you, and then there's listening to the music, hearing what's happening and doing something that sort of goes with it. Beyond that, it's open to your own artistic interpretation, and most spoons players are mostly self-taught, and most of us are fairly idiosyncratic in our methods, so bear that in mind as we go along. So the first step is how you actually hold your pair of spoons. We want to arrange them so that they can hit against each other and make a noise. To do that, you find the knuckle of your index finger on your favourite hand, and you fit your knuckle right in between the spoons so that you can hold them in between your fingers like this. So your thumb is resting on one spoon, the other one's between your first and second fingers, and then you just close your fingers there so you've got them in a nice firm grip. Your knuckle's acting as the sort of pivot there, so you might end up with a slightly sore knuckle at the end of this. And there should just be a little gap in between them. So this sort of creates a musical instrument out of two spoons in your hand. Once you've done this, if you hit them against something, like your own hand, they go clack. So before we get to actually playing them with a sort of constant rhythm, I'll just have a quick look at the different sounds you can make with these, because they're surprisingly versatile for something that you find in your kitchen drawers. You can hit them against your hand, hopefully you're getting some kind of sound, and you can vary that slightly. You can make it very quiet, you can make it louder, and you can really whack it and make it very loud indeed. That's your first thing. Second of all, you can make a more high-pitched ringing sound if you really stretch your hand out and hit them on the bony parts, or you can cup your hand slightly and make a more low-pitched sound. So we've got another thing we can vary there. So have a play with that. So at this point, to go any further, we're going to have to start using our knees, which means I'm going to have to zoom the camera in on my knees and you're not going to be able to see my face anymore. Okay, so we're now ready to start playing a constant rhythm with the spoons. At this point, rather than just hitting them on your hand, you're going to be hitting them between your hand and your leg, getting a sound on the up and on the down. So let's try that with just a constant 1, 2, 3, 4, going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And obviously with that we can make it quiet, we can make it loud, and anywhere in between. Now obviously just playing 1, 2, 3, 4 is not very interesting if you just go constantly. We're going to make this fit with music a little bit better. To do that, we're going to add an emphasis to one beat. So if your music is in 4/4 time, it's got a constant count of 4. The most common place to put that emphasis would be on the first beat. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, it becomes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll just make that first beat a little bit louder by hitting the spoons a little bit harder. Let's give that a go. And to vary that, you could also put that emphasis on the 3 and make it 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So doing one of those, changing between them, can make your playing a little bit more interesting. So at this point I'm going to come back with my face again because I have to talk a little bit. So most music you'll encounter has 4 beats to the bar, and doing some variation on this 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 will fit, but not all music does. The most common thing you'll encounter if you're playing to folk music, which is where you're most likely to use these probably, is things with a rhythm in 3. So that means when you're playing, suddenly going 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 with your spoons isn't going to fit. And you're going to have to do it slightly differently. The thing to do is not to panic and just to keep playing regardless, because what will happen is, rather than just going up, down, up, down, up, down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, you'll go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So you're alternating between down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. And if you don't think too hard about it, it will just work. Let's give that a go. So playing a constant rhythm when we've got 3 beats, or 6 beats rather than 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. So having successfully got a steady rhythm going with the spoons, we can now start to add some interesting accents and ornamentation, and this is the fun bit really. So the next ornamentation we're going to try looks quite a bit harder than it is. And this one is a finger roll. What's happening here, you're making your fingers very straight, kind of tensing your hand as much as you can, and then using those as something to roll the spoons against. So they hit each finger as they go along, and that makes a little rattle. Like that. And the secret is really, really tensing your fingers. Imagine that someone's pulling on the tip of each finger, making them as long as they can be, making your hand into a kind of musical instrument, and then we can put that into our playing. So the way that I would often incorporate these finger rolls into my playing is to replace the very end of the phrase in the music with them leading into the next phrase. For example, I might play 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and roll, then into the next phrase. So doing a few of those at full speed, and I'll vary the length of the phrases a little bit once you've got going. And then we have one final thing that I thought would be fun to show you. This one's kind of tricky. This one's actually harder than it looks, I reckon. So for this one, you're using the position of your non-spoons holding hand to get an extra beat in. And this is really your sort of challenge in this tutorial. Let's have a go. So the way that this one works, normally I've got my hand fairly flat when I'm playing. probably your third finger, maybe your little finger, is going to curl underneath, so that when your spoons are coming down, they hit a finger on the way, and that creates an extra little beat there. So that will sound like. Something like that. So those you could either put in as a single little extra beat, or you could play a few continuously to create a little rolly thing. So finally we've got a little combination. I thought I'd give you something you could go away and practice just to master all of those techniques. We're going to put together the constant playing with a 4-beat rhythm. Let's not make this more hard than we have to. With some of those hand hits and finger rolls at the end of the phrases. I'll play that fairly slowly and then a little bit faster so you can have a listen, have a go at home. So here's our little practice combination. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, hit, hit, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and roll. So I hope that you've found that interesting and helpful, and that you're feeling inspired to go away, find some spoons in your cutlery drawer and have a play with that yourself for your own at-home May morning experience. It helps if you have a real musician to play along with, but if you don't, I do recommend just sticking on a CD, playing along with it. Have a go at some of those techniques that we've just done. And then to finish off, I thought it would be nice to demonstrate actually playing this with some music, so I've made a little backing track myself for copyright reasons on the whistle. And this is a Morris tune because, well, May morning.
Today, today is the 1st of May. Though apart we stand throughout the land, our song will find a way. Today, today is the 1st of May. With joyful cries our voices rise, for winter's gone away. The green man sleeps while hawthorn weeps, with heavy boughs in flower. The dogs of Stursty's lament, alerting of the hour. Arise at dawn to greet the morn, from safe within the home. The bells shall ring and we shall sing, apart but not alone. For today, today is the 1st of May. Though apart we stand throughout the land, our song will find a way. Today, today is the 1st of May. With joyful cries our voices rise, for winter's gone away. The sun will rise while weary eyes in feathered beds still sleep. The hardy few will greater tune, their song her gift to keep. And Jack will dance above your stars, o'er land and sea and sky. And distant friends are close again, on world-wide webs we fly. And today, today is the 1st of May. Though apart we stand throughout the land, our song will find a way. Today, today is the 1st of May. With joyful cries our voices rise, for winter's gone away. With joyful cries our voices rise, for winter's gone away. Today it is the 1st of May, May Day. And we'll sing, and we'll sing, and we'll sing as we sing every May, but not in quite the usual way. For each of us is all alone. For each of us is all alone and far away, with time to muse, with time to muse on where we are today. Then we might see its nature's way. Then we might see its nature's way to say, May Day, May Day, 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 May Day.
Good morning everybody and happy May Day. My name is Rufus. I'm going to be playing today. Now is the month of May and hopefully you guys will want to sing along with me back home. First I'm going to show you guys the melody and hopefully you guys have the lyrics available, and after we have learnt the melody for the first and second section I will play the song through from start to finish and you guys can join in. So the first half of the first section goes, now is the month of May where merry lads are playing. I'll do that once more. Now is the month of May when merry lads are playing. Awesome. So the second half of the first section goes, fa la 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 la, fa la 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 la. I will do that again. Fa la 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 la, fa la 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 la. So that is the first section. I will play that again just before I do the whole song. But the second section goes, Each with his bonny lass upon the greeny grass. I'll do that first half again. Each with his bonny lass upon the greeny grass. And the second half of the second section goes fa la la la, fa la 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 la. I'll do that once more. Fa la la la, fa la 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 la. So the first section sounds like this. Now is the month of May, where merry lads are playing. Fa la 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 la, fa la 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 la. That is the first section. Now the second section goes. Each with his bonny lass upon the greeny grass. Fa la la la, fa la 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 la. Now that is the whole song, so I'm going to play it with chordal accompaniment and hopefully you guys will want to sing along with me. So here we go. Hope you're all ready. Now it's the month of May, where merry lads are playing. Fa la 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 la, fa la 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 la. Each with his bonny lass dancing on the grass. Fa la 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 la, fa la 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 la. The spring glad all in gladness, the lark winter sadness. Fa la 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 la, fa la 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 la. And to the bagpipe sound, the nymphs tread out their ground. Fa la 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 la, fa la 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 la. By them why sit we musing, you sweet delight refusing. Fa la 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 la, fa la 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 la. Say dainty nymph and speak, shall we barley break? Fa la 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 la, fa la 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 la. There you go. I hope you guys enjoyed that and have a great May Day. Thank you very much.